And so what is compassion fatigue? Compassion fatigue occurs when an individual, it's usually someone that's in the helping field, or it could be just someone who is caring for an individual that may have been ill for a very long time, becomes so emotionally and physically exhausted from the work that's involved in caring for others that they can no longer feel compassion or empathize with the individual that they're supposed to be caring for. And so when that happens to someone, they get a lot of guilt feelings over that too, because they think like something must be wrong with me. These are my clients, or this is my loved one that I'm supposed to care about. And I just can't feel anything. And I don't empathize or feel sorry for the person anymore. There must be something wrong with me. What's wrong with me? And so they get a lot of guilt feelings over that. And so what happens though is when the demands for the responsibilities involved with taking care for someone outweigh the available resources, then that's just a ripe opportunity for compassion fatigue to happen. And we have seen that over the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic. You see it in hospital settings. You see it in medical facilities, a lot of places where the demand is really high, but our resources have been low. And so that's just, like I said, a ripe opportunity for compassion fatigue to set in. So it's a natural occupational hazard for people that are in the helping and service fields, but it can happen to anyone with a big heart and a compassion for helping others. They're at a higher risk for compassion fatigue to set in. So how do you recognize if this has happened to you? The signs and the symptoms for compassion fatigue can be categorized in several different categories. You have physical signs, you have emotional signs, you have behavioral signs. So let's talk about some of those signs and symptoms that might tell you that you need a break, that you need a little bit of help. You need to step back and step aside for a little bit because compassion fatigue is starting to set in and take over. So what are those physical signs? Well, you would think, since it happens to individuals that are just so physically and emotionally exhausted, that you'd come home at the end of the workday and you'd just be so tired, you'd just fall into bed and sleep all night long. But unfortunately, most of the time, that's not what happens. You have a lot of thoughts running through your head, a lot of worries, and usually that will keep somebody from falling asleep or staying asleep. So they have a lot of sleep disturbances, and usually they're not able to sleep very well. And what happens when a person doesn't get enough sleep? Then that jumpiness and that anxiety and the nervousness increases. And when that increases, then you become irritable. You don't have as much patience with the people around you. You don't usually like yourself during that time because you're reacting in ways that's not normally yourself, because it's not just physical exhaustion, but it's emotional exhaustion. And when all of that is happening, it affects our bodies. So now what happens? You have headaches, you have stomach aches, weight loss. You may be skipping meals because you're so tired or exhausted, you just don't feel like making yourself anything to eat, or you've lost that desire to have anything to eat. Or you could go on the opposite end of the continuum, and because you're so emotionally exhausted and on edge, you're eating as a coping mechanism. So there might be weight gain. So what happens emotionally? You have all these thoughts that the worry increases, the racing thoughts appear, intrusive thoughts. And so you lose that ability to focus or concentrate and have any feelings of caring for the individuals that you're supposed to care for. That will make the person appear like they're cold, that they just don't care about anything. There's that all or nothing type of thinking going on. And because of that, then the person starts to have less enjoyment about their work. and less enjoyment in the regular activities that they used to enjoy. So they feel like they're sometimes trapped. Some people describe it as they feel like they're standing on the edge of a cliff and just ready to fall over at any point. And when that starts to happen, people start self-doubting themselves. They wonder, am I even in the right field? These are my clients I'm supposed to care about, or this is my loved one, a family member that I should care about. And I just can't find myself caring anymore about anything, or especially about what happens to the person I'm supposed to take care of. Am I even in the right field? Should I be a nurse or a doctor or whatever position it is that you're in? Should I even be doing this anymore? So all that doubt starts coming in. And when you're physically exhausted and you're emotionally exhausted, what happens when you get home? What happens to those relationships that in the home? You start arguing more. Everything becomes an argument because you don't have as much patience. You're not able to concentrate as well. So maybe you're making poor decisions. You're very unorganized. So then there's all these problems in your relationships, either in the work force or on the home front. So you become hypervigilant. So all of these symptoms that we just mentioned are very similar to the symptoms of burnout. But compassion fatigue and burnout are a little bit different. Compassion fatigue is a term that describes the impact of helping others, whereas burnout is a term that depicts the impact of a stressful work environment. So burnout happens over time and builds up and builds up and builds up, where compassion fatigue can happen suddenly. But the nice thing about compassion fatigue as opposed to burnout is there's a faster recovery time if you're able to manage it well. So what do we do if you're experiencing symptoms of compassion fatigue? How do you manage that? Well, the biggest thing is recognizing the signs that we just talked about. People who are in helping roles, whether it's on the work front or if you're caring for an individual, a loved one at home, we forget that we're vulnerable, that we're just human. And we tend to push our needs, our emotional needs, our physical needs aside. And that's why compassion fatigue can happen suddenly, because you're not paying attention to what your own needs are. And so people a lot of times describe it, they feel like they're drowning, just being totally overwhelmed. So being aware of the signs of compassion fatigue and then taking some actions for some self-care can avoid it from happening or going any further. So make self-care a part of your daily routine. In our society, we really applaud people who are hard workers that can multitask and seem to do a lot of work in just a short period of time. And we tend to applaud that. But we don't really look kindly upon people who take time off sometimes, especially if you're in a work environment where you're short-staffed, or it might be a busy, crisis-oriented type of job that you're in. But, we have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of anybody else. It's like whenever you take a plane trip and they go over the safety tips before you take off, and they're talking about those oxygen masks that come down. What's the first thing that they tell you? Put your own oxygen mask on first before you help somebody else. And that's because you need to take care of yourself before you're able to take care of others. So sometimes self-care is wrongly viewed as a selfish act, but it's a fact that you have to take care of yourself before you can adequately take care of others. So there's the big five in self-care. So there's getting adequate sleep, a healthy diet, increasing your physical activity, relaxation. That's the one that everybody tends to push to the side when they're in the helping field, or if you just have a big heart, or passion for helping others, you tend to kind of push your own needs and that relaxation aside, and then maintaining contact with others. So every morning, you should do a little 5-minute check-in to see where you're at on that continuum. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating right? Are you giving yourself the time that you need? When you get home at the end of the day, how are you relaxing? Are you need to engage in activities such as maybe playing games or watching a funny movie or TV series. Some people enjoy meditation or yoga. And you can also engage in breathing or calming exercise. At the end of this webinar, we're going to take some time to do some breathing and calming exercises, and Ileana is going to provide you with some handouts that will give you some instructions for some breathing and calming exercises that you can engage in on a daily basis to help. So practice self-compassion. Give yourself permission to take time out for yourself.
Hey, Donna.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know. Are you hearing noise, like kind of an interference a little bit there?
Yes, I do hear that.
Is that okay? And I also have,
hear me?
I think we can hear you fine. It's just the noise is getting a little louder and your volume is going down just a little bit. So maybe, I don't know if we can raise your volume. And then we do have a hand up. So I'm going to allow Camilla Lindsay to talk and ask a question.
Sorry, that was an accident.
Oh, okay, no problem. Well, the raise your hand feature does work. So if anybody has a question, make sure you raise your hand or put it in the chat box. Thank you so much.
Okay, on that self-compassion piece, it can be helpful to find some positive affirmations and write them on little index cards and put them up around your house. Put them up on the refrigerator, maybe on the mirror where you get ready for work each day, on your dashboard, on your car. I know I like to send my staff, every Monday I send my staff a thought for the week and find some inspirational quote, because I feel it's important to keep that positive affirmation in front of you throughout the day to kind of help keep a positive focus on for the whole day. So if it gets stressful, you can kind of remind yourself. And whenever you work in a helping field of any kind, or just any place actually, it's really good to share those successes with each other in your work environment, and keep a focus and remind each other and encourage each other on why we got into the field that we got into and why we do the important work that we do. And that can be very helpful, just encouraging one another as you go along. Also, set boundaries. Like I said, when you are under compassion fatigue, your patience can get a little bit on edge. You can get a little nervous. And so you want to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with positive people. So watch what websites and social media sites that you're getting onto, and make sure that you're surrounding yourself with positive people. You want to make sure that you're not falling into a set of negative individuals that are constantly complaining or inciting argumentative conversations. So cultivate healthy friendships. Find like-minded, positive people to surround yourself in, or around you in your community, as well as on social media. And try to avoid talking about work once you leave the work site, while you're at home and out and about in the community. One thing that a lot of people find very helpful is to use a journal. So you don't have to worry about sentence structure. You don't have to worry about your grammar. You don't even have to show it to anybody, but just getting that tension out that's built up through the day and getting it down on paper, writing it out. You can even throw it away when you're done, but just getting that release of tension that's built up throughout the day can be really helpful people find that very cathartic and helpful to get that out throughout the day.
Hey, Donna, I'm sorry to interrupt you again. The volume seems to still be a little low. If I could ask everyone too to see if they can raise their volume on their computers, and maybe that would help some of the issue. And Donna, maybe you can try checking your audio settings and maybe increasing your output volume.
I'm going to put myself on mute for just a moment.
Okay. Apologize to everyone for the inconvenience here. We're trying to figure that out.
Okay, can't seem to make an impact on that. Can you hear me if I get a little closer? Does that help?
I can hear you fine. I just don't know if anybody else that are you having issues, type into the chat, please. Okay, we're getting a lot better. Good. Okay.
Okay. So boost your resiliency. So resiliency is our ability to bounce back from stress. Now that's a skill, but it's a skill that can be learned and cultivated. And that involves making yourself aware of your surroundings, what your situation is, and your feelings about the situation. So if you're getting ready to enter into a stressful situation, whether it's at work or if it's at home, take a few moments before you enter into it, take a few deep breaths, focus on what needs to be accomplished and what resources you have. And then as you enter the situation, try to do so with a non-anxious presence. So take some deep breaths and just focus on what's the alternative that you can, with the resources that you have, that you can best meet what needs are at the time. And then once the experience is over, find somebody that you trust where you can just talk about your experience and process what just happened. So you might want to increase your daily activities, physical exercise. That helps increase endorphin levels and that's a natural calming agent in the body when you increase those endorphins. But you also want to remember to include fun activities in your daily routines. Even though you may be exhausted when you get home from work, just doing things that you enjoy, whether it's taking a nice hot bath or going for a walk. You might want to start a new tradition in your home, like a family game night. If you have a hobby, engage in your hobby. Maybe you have a hobby that you haven't done for quite some time. It might be time to take it back up, or it might be time to develop a new hobby, something that you might have been interested in for a while, but just haven't taken that time to start and engage in it. So practice these positive coping skills on a daily basis, whatever it takes just to keep you calm and relaxed. What I've heard in my field over the last couple of years as the pandemic has gone up, there's been a big increase in the sales of alcohol during this time, and people using that as a calming technique, as a coping mechanism. So you want to watch that and kind of stay away from that could cause problems later on. So think of activities that involve your hands and doing things and increasing those endorphins. Choose those types of coping mechanisms that are more positive and can lead to better outcomes. And also create a positive work environment. Now that might involve some initiative on your part. So think about maybe starting a support group in your department or at your agency. If you're a supervisor, give your employees opportunities to discuss how they're handling the stress at work. And then what are they doing when they go home after work to de-stress? Are they able to separate their work life from their personal life? What are they doing at home to de-stress and relax? So make that part of your conversations with your employees. So you might want to consider having a self-care buddy, somebody that you can call and check in with every day, whether you call on the phone or text and just say, hey, how's things going? What are you doing to de-stress today? And just pointing out if you're noticing those signs of compassion fatigue with your self-care buddy, pointing that out, because sometimes it's easier for someone else to notice those signs before we notice it in ourselves. And by all means, if you're feeling very overwhelmed and you don't have someone that you can talk to, feel free to call the Peace River Center crisis line that's available 24/7. The crisis line is not just for someone who's in the midst of a major life crisis, but it could be someone to talk to avoid being in a crisis. So our number is 863-519-3744, and I'm sure it's on all of the materials that Ileana will be sending to you. It's on our website, but utilize our crisis line if you need it. So I'm going to give some time to answer any questions that you might have, and then I have some exercises, some calming and breathing exercises that we're going to do as a group. But I want to give you a chance to ask any questions that you might have at this point.
I don't see any questions in the chat or any raised hands at the moment, Donna.
Okay, so are you guys ready to do some exercises? Yeah, I can't see you. So I want everybody to hold up their hand. And this first one is called Starfish Breathing. We're going to trace out our hand. And when you go up a finger, I want you to breathe in. And when you come down, I want you to breathe out. So hold on a second. Let me take out this blurred background of mine, because when it's blurred, it's harder to see. There, is that better? So, you ready? So when we go up, we're going to breathe in. When we go down, we're going to breathe out. So everybody breathe in. Out. In. And out. Breathe in. Through the nose. Out through your mouth. In. Out. In. And out. So you can do that throughout the day, just that controlled breathing to help relax you and get you focused. I like that one. Another one that you can do is what we call 4-point or square breathing. So we're going to draw a square as we're doing our breathing. And as you go up, you're going to breathe in. As you go across, you're going to hold your breath, pause. As you go down, you're going to breathe out. And when you go across, you're going to pause again. So when you breathe in through your nose. And it might help to put your hand on your stomach. So you should feel your stomach move in and out as you're breathing in and out. And I want you to breathe out through your nose. So ready? Let's breathe in. Hold. Out. Hold. In. Hold. Out. And hold. So that's another controlled breathing exercise that you can do. Ileana talked a little bit about eye movement desensitization reprocessing, EMDR. That's a type of therapy we use to do some trauma work. We use it a lot with individuals who have undergone trauma of some kind. And one of the things that we teach them is called the butterfly hug. It's something that they can do at home. But what it is just utilizing bilateral movement as a sense of calming. And bilateral movement's been used since man began. I mean, when you think about a baby that's upset, what do you do when you're holding a baby and the baby's crying? We just automatically, it comes natural to us to rock back and forth. That's that bilateral movement, right, left, right, left, right, left movement. And it's the same kind of movement that happens in REM sleep. Most people have heard of REM sleep. And the purpose of REM sleep stands for rapid eye movement. That happens when you're in the deepest part of your sleep at night. And the purpose for REM sleep is the body's natural way of relieving the tension that was built up through the day. And what happens during REM sleep is your eyes rapidly move back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that bilateral movement from right to left, has a very calming and way, and it helps the brain just process through the stress of the day. So when you're having something that's distressing happen, and I'm going to scoot back so you can see my arms a little bit, so hopefully you can hear me. When you're having something distressing or you find yourself anxious or nervous, if you put your arms here and very rapidly just pat right, left, right, left, right, left, as you're deep breathing, it has a very calming effect. So what I want you to do to kind of see for yourself how calming this can be, I want you to think of something that may have happened this week. Nothing huge. I don't want people going away from this webinar feeling worse than when they first started. But I want you to think of something just mild that was annoying. Maybe somebody said something to you rude. Or maybe in traffic this morning, somebody cut you off, pulled in front of you. Just something that's slightly annoying. I want you to think about it for a second. And then I want you to put your arms like this. And while you're thinking of that, I want you to rapidly go like this. So everybody do that for me. Think about something just mildly distressing, and then start this process. Okay, now take a deep breath. I'd like to hear from any of you. How was that for you? Did you feel it calming down, and what was distressing that may have been this distressing? And at the end, maybe now it's at this level, how it comes down. Did anybody experience that? You can take yourself
I don't see, oh, I've got a chat. Yes, it helps. I can see how that would be helpful in times of stress. Yes.
I'll do that a lot of times. I have several programs that are at different facilities. And so throughout the week, many times I'm on the road going from one facility to the other. And I'm in the car all by myself. I'm a worrywart, I admit it. And so it seems like when I'm by myself in a car, that's when my thoughts are just going, and things that might, be distressful or that's when they come up as I'm driving along. And that's the worst time because, I don't like traffic. And so I'll find myself on the steering wheel doing that. And it just has this calming effect. If I'm in traffic and there's a lot of traffic all around me, if I'm on the interstate and a lot of traffic, I'll just start doing that on the steering wheel, and it just helps bring it down. And it's because that's that body's natural way of relieving stress, is engaging in that bilateral movement. There's been lots of research on that. So now for our next exercise, it's called a container exercise. This is also an exercise that we teach people that are in trauma type of therapies. So I want you to imagine a container, a huge container that you can put distressing thoughts, worries into. It has to be a container that's big enough to hold all your worries, all your stressful situations that you're thinking about, that you can just stick into this container. So it needs to be big enough to hold it. It has to be strong enough to hold it in there. But it needs to be, we usually tell people it should have a two-way lock. You can put things in it, but then you can take things out when it's time for you to problem solve and you want to work on situations that you don't want to just stuff it and not worry about it. There may be times you want to take it out to problem solve, times that are appropriate, maybe not in the midst of a project at work, but maybe later. So I want you to think about it and use all your senses. What does it look like? Does it have any smells attached to it? What does it feel like when you touch it? All your senses. So just think about it for a few minutes of what that would look like for you. Now what I want you to do is think about the stresses that you've had this week, anything that you're worrying or stressed over right now. And I want you to imagine putting them away inside that container and shutting it closed. And usually when we have them do that, we have them imagine what that feels like. Notice in your body what that feels like to have all of that stress taken off your own shoulders and put away into that container. And now I want you to do the same thing with bilateral, but I want you to go slower. Because we're focusing in on the positive of the feeling of having that removed. So the movements need to be slower and calmer. Somebody said now they're ready for a nap. Does anybody have like a calming effect? Did they notice a calming effect going through that process? Okay. So we're going to give you the instructions for some of these. So these are just some little exercises that you can do anywhere. It works really well for children because it's something that they can engage in without drawing a whole lot of attention to themselves, because that bilateral movement doesn't have to be up here. They can have their hands down on their lap and tapping on their legs under their desk where no one can really notice what you're doing, but just to have that calming sensation, even in a very crowded room where it's not that noticeable. You can even do it with your feet on the floor where you're tapping, raising one heel then the other so that it's tapping. So you can do this in a very inconspicuous way where nobody's really noticing, but you're calming yourself down. So these are some activities I hope that can help you, that you can take from this webinar and use in your everyday life. So any comments or?
The sound was fading again there at the end, but I don't see any questions or comments. But if anybody has any questions or comments for Donna, please feel free to ask. We have a thank you. Loved, this was very informative. These stress exercises, thank you. They loved it all. So no questions, great presentation. I do agree that when I was doing the butterfly, that just really made me feel very calm and like I wanted to close my eyes, and take a little nap. So that was great. Thank you so much, everyone. Lots of chat on how this was very helpful, and how to say no to family when home. Yes, sometimes we have to say no. Great techniques. And yes, I know that, Donna, you've done before a presentation on the EMDR, so we can share that out as well, some of the resources for that. Well, thank you, everyone. If there are no further questions, what we'll do is we're going to follow up with an email after this. It will include the presentation and the additional handouts to remember how to do all of the techniques that Donna shared with us today. So please feel free to give us a call, email us, call us with any information that you might need or any questions that might come up after this presentation. Additionally, I'd like to share that October is the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we have other webinars available to share information on kind of some myths against domestic violence and share some of the facts that come along with our programs and how we help individuals become survivors from domestic abuse. So with all that, thank you. I appreciate everyone, and we will be in touch again. Thank you so much.